Welcome to Dove and Dragon Radio. I'm your host, M.L.Ruscsak. I'm here with my special guest from Australia, Robert Lee Johnston. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me here.
Now, you have two books out. We're going to talk a little bit before the show about them. You have Tribute and Lucifer on Leave.
Yes, that's right.
So, which one came first?
Tribute came first. Tribute was the book I had in my head my whole life. It's basically fictional, but all I have done is change the names of the innocent and the guilty and protected those who aren't here now. The town itself I protected as well. The book is named after the town that it's set in, called Tribute, and that's a cross between the town I live in now. I have a farm here. You could probably see the trees behind me. So it is a cross between this town and a couple of others that I was raised in that are very tropical, very rainforested. In fact, I'm in the wettest town in Australia, so we have the best whitewater rafting in the world. We have massive amounts of waterfalls, lakes, and rivers, and it's generally a part of Australia that isn't real. It's only 1% of Australia, believe it or not, the rainforest here, and it probably gets about that much attention in Australian literature as well. And
yeah, see, I didn't know any of this at all.
yeah, even quite a lot of Australians aren't aware of just how different this part of Australia is. And of course, we're spoilt rotten because we have the Great Barrier Reef all along our coastline. So we have the underwater garden and then the tropical garden outside of the water. And we have that very wonderful combination of where rainforest meets beach meets glorious ocean. And because the Great Barrier Reef is protected, it is very, very special and clean and picturesque. So I found with Tribute in particular, I focused a little bit more on what we call the Atherton Tablelands here, and that is the rainforest and the rivers and the lakes and the waterfalls. And my second book, Lucifer on Leave, that's a comedy set in Cairns, and that's more about the Great Barrier Reef and the coastal area here.
And I think I have my radio up or volume up enough where I can hear some of the insects that are around you today.
And you'll see birds flying past. I'm a little bit of a soft touch with animals, so anyone that has a sick animal or an unwanted animal, they just drop at my place. They know I'll take care of it. And so I have bird nests on my verandas and geese all around me and animals all around me. So you might see the odd thing flying past us here. That's just them coming back to their nests. But that was very handy. My whole life has been spent in these sort of areas. So without tooting my own horn or patting myself on the back too much, I can really write animals very, very well. So Australian wildlife, particularly the wildlife we have here, comes into play in both the books a great deal.
That is awesome that you're able to take where you're at, educate even me on something I didn't know about, and do it in a way that's still fictional and still protects the area that you're in.
That's right, and of course with all the native and nature stuff, there's absolutely no fiction involved there. I've used a little bit of magic reality, if you like, because there isn't a wonderful Aboriginal. I also in Tribute have a wonderful Aboriginal character because unfortunately in Australia, and so I tried to write two Aboriginal characters, one that people would traditionally recognise with the prison systems and things like that, because there's a massive percentage of Aboriginal people in jails, outweigh exactly like your country with African Americans. The numbers are far greater, and unfortunately that's the sort of Aboriginal person a lot of city people meet. But when you come to the places where there's land and they're still very independent, there's another sort of Aboriginal character. It's very beautiful, very in touch with the earth, and there is almost a magic realism about the way they worship the earth and worship the nature around them. So I've painted him very, very beautifully, and even the Aboriginal community here really like the job I've done with him. And it can be a tricky thing writing another race of people. You know, if I'm white writing an Aboriginal part, that can be a little tricky. So again, I've done that very respectfully and very honestly. So I don't hide the bad things or manipulate the bad things to make it all look rosy. Um, so it's kind of important that I had the nature and this particular Aboriginal character set in there. It seems to bring the nature to life a whole lot more, and with the animal connections that he has, makes it that much more believable.
Well, here's the thing, with any community, you have good and evil in anything.
Exactly right.
We
Exactly right.
concentrate and we see in the news the evil. We don't always see the positive. Why? Because in the news, it's all about ratings, right? So
That's exactly right.
when you take the good and you actually do it true to a person's nature, and then you add in everything around it, then you get in touch with everything.
That's right, and it really does bring life to it all. And because the settings are so postcard like, it can almost be a little overwhelming, the beauty, and you can think, okay, I get the hint, it's pretty. And I don't like when I read things and people have to reiterate all the time. And I find he just makes it happen without me telling you how it's happening. It works really well. It's a great tool for writers, I think, using a character like that. And I should preface that by saying I do the same with the Australian white characters as well. I wanted to make sure you see the genuine beauty of our not so distant past, because we used to have a really wonderful language here, and now it's become a universal language. We've stolen from America, we've stolen from Europe, and once upon a time, in the not so distant past, our language was a very, very different one to the rest of the world's, and there was a certain pride in that and a certain beauty that came along. There was a rhythmic writer's dream about it. And before I knew I was a writer, for some silly reason, every Australian saying that I ever heard stuck in my head like glue. I, from a young age, got the sarcasm, I got the dryness, I got the whole, and I had a really sticky mind for that. And if I'm a writer for anything, it's just by keeping these old sayings alive and our old language alive.
Well, that's wonderful because we have, if you go to Ireland, it's the common language. Only 14% of Ireland speaks Irish.
Yeah,
Only 10% of Scotland speaks Scots Gaelic. We're
yeah,
losing our languages unless
we really
us
are.
as authors, as writers, as media uses them as a medium to teach through our works.
I agree because TV is such a big influence, and probably 60% of our television here is American television. We know all your sitcoms. We know all your latest TV shows and movies. The Australian film industry and TV industry is very, very small in comparison. So to fill the 20 channels we have now, we have a very wide ranging selection of overseas material, and for and you've been our buddies for a long time, American. So your language has seeped into ours in the last 10 years a lot more than the previous 50. And so I'm finding that the Australians that enjoy my work are going, oh yeah, I forgot that saying, and really finding beauty in their hometown languages. So much so that I had to put a glossary in the back because my test readers from around the world were going, what does this mean? What does this phrase mean? So the glossary is brilliant on its own.
I have an author within my publishing house that writes from a Native American's point of view.
Oh,
And she
beautiful.
has a glossary in the back because
Yeah.
unless you're familiar with that Native American tribe, you don't know the
Yeah.
words.
You don't know what it means. And we have a similar thing here. Our country, as yours, is very, very big, but ours is a lot more spread out. So the language I use in the very far north of Queensland, where I am now, is very different to Sydney. I had to actually include the glossary for Sydney siders as well because they're not from this northern area. And our north of Australia is, we call it our deep north, just as you call it the deep south in your country.
Mhm.
So our north is the tropical area, the last of the frontiers, if you will. So this rainforest and all the beauty that's here is also two-sided. It's very, very dangerous, and um, it still has a little bit of that danger. Australians like to tease the rest of the world about how vicious and life-threatening it is to be here. We play that up a little bit, but in reality, this sort of part of Australia is why I live here, because there's still a challenge to be had here. There's still new adventures to be found and new things discovered. And I think when I started writing about this area, I thought, have I seen other books that have been written here? And I've seen documentaries set on the Great Barrier Reef and all this sort of stuff, of course, but nothing really touching on the lifestyle. Um,
Yeah,
and
that's missing a lot of books.
it is, and so I find between the language being very authentic and the settings, people outside of Australia are I guess because the Great Barrier Reef is a big tag as well, but people are kind of getting interested in this part of Australia, which has been fairly heavily neglected in its past.
Well, it's not so much neglected, but protected. But now
Yeah,
yeah, we're going into the last frontiers, really, if you think
that's
about
right.
it. But you still have
Hmm.
to be careful because you still want to protect what's there.
That's right, and these are very. Uh, there's a saying that we have here that behind America, we're one day ahead and 30 years behind. So everybody really loves being 30 years behind the rest of the world. A lot of people that live here don't want the mod cons. They love that view. They love the
Mhm.
mountains, trees down, and as they're dying off, for lack of a better word, a newer generation's coming in that's much more willing to share. So we're finding that the tourist population here has always been massive. That's what keeps this part of Australia alive. Um, but unless you're in Australia, you really don't, a lot of people don't really look into anything but the reef on this area. It is almost something so beautiful and pretty that it drags your attention away from the rest of the immediate area. And that worked well for me because I get to show everybody something new.
That is wonderful because like me, I love the seawater and stuff like this from a
Yeah, yeah.
distance or behind a glass. I love it behind a glass where I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah,
But
that's right. It's a little bit safer. You don't have to worry about the crocodiles and the snakes and the spiders.
well, I'm not worried about the snakes. The spiders scare me. I'm
Yeah,
don't like the fish very much.
yeah, okay.
But
The crocodiles can be a little bit of a handful.
yeah, but I can outrun a crocodile on land.
I don't know if you can see, but just behind me, I'll just move. There's a body of water behind me,
Mhm.
and we have two crocodiles in there. And whenever people say, what are you going to do if they chase us? I say, exactly as you do, I'm going to run. But I tell them, I'm going to trip you first. I only have to outrun you.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it is
We can
funny.
outrun a crocodile on land, but we can't in water.
That's right. And it's nice to be not the top of the food chain sometimes in our lives. I think humans, we think we are godlike. We can rule the world and we got more power than anything. I really like living here because I get humbled by nature, and I realize I'm not the strongest here. I'm not the most dangerous. We have cassowaries that are renowned to attack people, crocodiles, and whenever I get a little bit too big-headed, I got a crocodile there to remind me my place in this world, and for me that's very humbling, and it's great for my writer's imagination too, because when I see him attack another crocodile or attack something, I can actually now translate his actions into humans, and I get to see these animals so much that I start to notice their human traits as well, and it works well with characters and having that different glimpse at life, I think.
I think that does help a lot when you can take something from nature and then transform it into a human characteristic because we're all animals. We all belong to animal kingdom. So
That's
there's
right.
certain traits that translate between, what we see on four or two legs versus what we see in humanity.
That's right, and we're so protected from nature now, aren't we? I like to wear no shoes sometimes because I like to feel the grass under my feet, and I wear no shoes more than often. I have none on now, but on the farm it's quite different. I don't have to impress anybody. But I went to Europe recently, and I found no one was barefoot, and I talked to a person from Holland, and I was like, and I was actually barefoot in the park, and they said, "Why don't you have shoes on?" And I said, don't you like to feel the earth under your feet where you are, and like the earth against you?
Mhm.
And he thought about it. He said, I haven't felt grass or the earth under my feet in the last 20 years. And that's kind of a big disconnection from our planet and our, where we base ourselves. For me, always being around nature, it stuck in my head 20 years later that this person still hasn't felt
Yeah, that
under
boggles
their
my
feet.
mind. In the wintertime when there's snow, I'll wear shoes.
Yeah,
But
of course.
other than that, I'm not wearing shoes unless I have to go into a building.
Yeah, yeah. If there's people around or you have to go somewhere, that's the
Yeah,
same thing for me. Um, so I like this book because it's a nice connection to nature again, and Tribute also covers. It's an adults only book, not for anything triple X or porn related, but the concepts I've brought in there are very very adult and need a, a mature mind
mature
to read.
mind.
Definitely, and I can tell when I'm dealing with people who are not able to do that in my reviews and the way people respond to me. But on the other hand, the people that can persevere through the beginnings, because there's child abuse in there and child slavery
Mhm.
and abuse by churches, and I basically tore the band-aid off this, and I thought before writing it, how am I going to attack this book? And the only way you can do it is with pure honesty, and you can't be biased in any way, and that really offends some people. The other problem I had with this book was, when do I introduce this theme to the reader? And one thing I dislike in books is people buttering me up for 6 or 7 chapters and then throwing something at me that's either very hideous or doesn't deserve to be there, or they've suckered me into it somehow. And I thought from the very first sentence, I'm going to be completely honest with you, and I've just thrown you into the fire. And for the first 9 pages, you don't know if the writer or the narrator is on the bad guy's side or the good guy's side. It's just so cut and dry, and it's just telling exactly what happens. And that causes me a lot of trouble with people who, um, I like to think that they want to attack that subject, and the subjects are so big that they're angry, yes, but they find it easy to attack me
Exactly.
because
We need
it's
to
so big.
attack the abuse in the churches. We need to attack child slavery. We have to attack child abuse.
Yeah,
These are big subjects. These are not little things that just one or two people can fix. So they get mad and they attack the people that are bringing them to attention.
that's right.
Well,
And I try not to engage these people, but 1 out of every 100 readers will be quite upset and attack me personally, and I don't mind that. I knew when I wrote the book that was going to happen, and I like to think that it is what we're discussing. They're angry at the subjects, they're angry that it happens, but they don't really know who to fire their ammunition at. So if they take it out on me, that's okay. But I think we're all little tiny axes, and these subjects are massive, massive trees. And if we have enough of those little axes and enough people swinging them, we can make a difference, and the whole world can make a difference. It still breaks my heart to this day, the numbers that both our countries, and this is worldwide,
mhm.
both our countries' numbers are enough to make a person cry if you look it up and you
They are.
investigate.
They're atrocious. I mean, really, look at the numbers, look at the data. This between child abuse, the numbers in the churches that are coming out more and more in the
Yeah.
last 10 years. And then you go to the trafficking of human trafficking, it doesn't matter what age it is or what nationality, the
Or
numbers are
country.
just horrible.
And I think that's why this book is everyone thinks their book's important. I understand that, But even compared to my second book, my comedy, this book is kind of important because it is universal, and this isn't just a problem faced in Australia or America. Every country in the world has got issues with this problem, so that can translate and cover a lot of bases. The other thing that our countries have, and it's a very good thing, I have to bring it up though, is that we protect the victims, and so we never hear their point of view. In Australia, we hear, yes, there's this person being caught for such and such, but we never hear anything more than that because, of course, we want to protect the child, we want to protect their future. But somewhere along the line, we need to hear victims' perspectives, and we need to be able to connect to those victims and separate them from their attackers, um, because somehow or other we lump them together,
Mhm.
and we must, because how do these numbers happen with us with our eyes wide open? We must be overlooking things. We must be missing something. My country is very terrible with prison sentences for these kinds of actions. And so the deterrent is getting less and less for these people.
Mhm.
And when we send them to prison, that we're sending them to prison that are full of all sorts of prisoners, but these people gravitate to their own. I was in prison for 3 years, and the book goes through that for marijuana when I was a kid, for weed. But I got to see that murderers hang out with murderers, and car thieves hang out with car thieves. And these type of people, they hang out with each other. And we're in a room that's very, very small, and you can overhear everything that they're saying, whether you want to or not. And and I always thought, I can never tell people these things because it's just part of the suffering and part of the punishment. Um, but I'm actually very the opposite of that. I heard the conversations they have after their court, and there's no guilt. There's no other
Remorse.
punishment, no remorse. And in fact, one of the scariest things in there is that when they hang out together, they're planning on how not to get caught again.
Yeah.
Just as car thieves get together and go, oh, I got caught because of this or that, they go, well, next time, when you steal a car, don't do it this way, don't do it that way. These type of prisoners and criminals, they're talking about the exact same things in their line of work. So uh, I don't know the answer. I really don't. I'm not a politician. I'm not a powerful person. But I think we all just have to, particularly with our loved ones, because the other scary percentage is that most of these victims are being victimized by someone they know.
Mhm.
It's a family member or a friend. It's not a perfect stranger like we all imagine it could be or might
If
be.
you go on any TV show, it's always someone that's just hunting a person based on looks. Well, in reality, 90% of the people are family members or friends or colleagues.
That's right. And so I think that mothers and fathers should have no guilt in really breaking down the people that their children hang around with 100%.
Mhm.
Have all those thoughts. Can I trust this person? Can I leave things alone with this person? Some of these questions to ask yourself can be quite tough questions to ask,
Mhm.
to put a magnifying glass on a loved one, or well, we must have to, because we haven't or we're not, and these numbers are still happening in this modern era. We're still seeing those percentages. And I, I, I think I got the best compliment a little while ago. A mother sent me a letter and said, my daughter's just turned 18 today, and I thrust tribute into their hands because they're kind of modern age, a little naive teenagers, and and she's sort of thanked me and said, because you had the conversation with them that I want to have but I can't have. And to me that was a compliment, because to hand this book to a 18-year-old who is a little naive and childish, still is it could go either way with this
Mhm.
book. And she said it opened her eyes as a mother, and she's sure that her children's eyes have just been opened that little bit more now. And and of course, this problem just doesn't happen to children, does it? It's
No,
happening to
it's,
men,
it's
women of all ages.
adults. It doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter
Yeah,
your orientation, if you like whatever, it
yeah,
can happen to anyone.
that's right. And we're all susceptible to seeing it, I think, too, because with all those numbers, we all must have known someone or seen someone or walked past someone. We've
Mhm.
all sort of, we have to have been in close contact if those numbers are correct. The other thing that Tribute is very important in my mind about is that there's 6 victims that all went through the same um, bad guy. And so you get 6 different responses. They shatter and explode in 6 completely different ways. And no one is to say one of those ways isn't right. And of course,
That's correct. As
and each one of
as a
those,
survivor of some of this stuff that we're talking about, I can tell you there's no right or wrong way to deal with it.
that's right. And so I often thought about just making it about one of us. And then I thought, no, I'm going to put all of us in there so people can see that this reaction and the pain left by these people and the confusion left by these people is life lasting, and then we see a court put them away for 3 to 6 years on average here.
Or not
You
at
know,
all.
yeah, that is just so demoralizing, and then some kid gets busted with weed and they get 6 months jail. It really makes no sense to me whatsoever. But with those 6 different reactions, you are going to get a variety of reactions as well. So one will no doubt in those numbers turn to self-harm. One will turn to suicide. Most will turn to drugs or alcohol or some other form of love. So to see how these people, because the book ends when they're 26, but to see the people get to that age, it's punching all the time, and that was very, very important for me. I didn't want lulls in it too much, because when you're under that sort of pressure, as you know from your experiences, there's no lull. It doesn't stop.
No,
It
it
punches
doesn't.
all the time.
It doesn't until you choose to quit being the victim and start being the survivor. When you get
That's
to that
exactly right.
mindset, that's when you get the
That's
law.
right. And for people that have never been in that situation, I try to put them in the shoes where they get to understand those decisions, and they, for for lack of a better word, forgive those decisions. Because these kids, they're not perfect and they're not great kids, but they definitely didn't deserve what they got.
Right.
And the other thing that this book is about, to me, it's one of the greatest love stories I've ever read or written. And it's a very different love story, because it's not about a grown man and a grown woman. It's about 6 friends that aren't related whatsoever, but yet be- they've never been shown how to love decently. But somehow these 6 learn how to love one another, and though they're not family, they probably love each other more than most families actually do. There's a lot of dysfunctional families out there,
Yes.
and with all that's going on around them, they shouldn't rightly know how to do that. They shouldn't rightly know how to care for one another and prepare each other for the future, and have deep understanding. By rights, they should be hateful and spiteful and continuing this cycle. Uh, and so it's a story of love and the bravery of stopping this, and stopping it because no one else will, because the rest of the town, these sleepy little places, can overlook these problems just as the whole world has overlooked the problems we're speaking about. And
Exactly.
little towns that are poor, um, small populations, they don't tend to look outside their backyards much. They keep everything insulated within their own little houses and lives. They don't look in the neighbour's yard. They don't look to um, be sticky beaks. Um, so I think sticky beaking to a certain degree probably save lives, probably helps.
It probably does a little bit, and it's thankful that there are people that get nosy into other people's business because it's bringing light to some of this. But at the same time, we have to figure out as humans how to fix it.
That's right. And so this book shows what happens if there's no sticky beaks, if there's no one looking in, if there's no one paying attention. This is possibly what could happen to anyone without love, without those people making sure we're okay, especially in those tender years, and orphans to boot. Um, you know, they need a lot more people checking up on them, making sure their mental welfare is great. I contribute a little bit from each of my book to a university study in Australia here, and it's a wonderful hands-free um, organization. And I love those ones because it seems anytime you donate money to an orphanage or some sort of fund, 6 months later they're in the paper for doing the same things that you want them to be protected from. So finding these little niche places. This one was called Real Well, and they're scientists, and
Mhm.
it's done in classrooms, so there's no one-on-one stuff. It's all done in front of people. It's very, very mindful of the child. And I think as the next decade comes along, we're going to see a lot more of those little niche places that are solely dedicated to the health of these children. Because if the problems they're facing from it aren't dealt with in the first 5 or 6 years, the chances of them being in the criminal system is so high, and and not just for petty crime either. You know, these are some damaged people that we're having out in society with no foundations and no backup plans, and these little organisations like Real Well are really trying to jump on these problems early, diagnose anything that's been left over early, and work through that as fast as possible, which I think is much better than silence.
It
I really
is.
believe.
It
I
really
really believe.
is.
And love and patience is basically the whole heart of my book. Um, yes, there's a lot of hate in there from the crimes that are being done, but ultimately, to me, it's a love story. It really is.
See, we think of love stories as two people coming together, but really, when you can have a group of friends that come together under the similar circumstances to learn to love, that is the first step of any love story.
Yeah, I think so, and I like the challenges that presents because it's kind of easy for writers to write a couple in love, right? And
Mhm.
they have their little adventure and that to have boundaries and friendships. Sometimes all those boundaries get tested, just as in any relationship. So one's bound to fall in love with the other at one point, and it's all complicated. And what's going on here? Um, and you know they like sisters and brothers. They can hate each other's guts with passions at times, but still have that core, central um, forgiveness there. And I really had fun with the six personalities, and because I knew all these people, I didn't have to branch far from the truth. And one or two are still alive, and I got their permission to write their characters. And I knew I'd done well when one of them rang me, and he's not a reader, and he said, "You've immortalized me forever."
That right there is the best compliment any author can get from anyone.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And because he was there and he was part of it and he's in it and it meant a lot to me. And he's not the sort of person. And this is another dangerous thing for writers, isn't it? Who you hand your work to, because
Mhm.
most people will tell you it's great, no matter if it's the
Garbage.
worst writing I've ever. Yeah, and so before I sent it to my friends, I thought if I'm going to do this because I'm very badly educated. I left school at 14. I we have English in our schools and maths, but then the dumb one is general English and general maths, and I used to fail those every year, and just not very smart at school. So when I wrote it, I picked the harshest editor in Australia and book critic, and I sent it to him first. And I was expecting to get a letter back saying, go back to school, learn to,
Mhm.
put punctuation and things like that. And he was so complimentary, and he's very, very hard to get. He's never given a 5-star review in his life, but he gave me 4. And he said if it wasn't for the language and the blood, I'd probably give you higher. And so I sent it to my friends with a little bit more confidence then, and when they ring back and are in tears and things like that, that to me was okay. I've got you were there, and I'm taking you right back to that point. I think I'm on track here, and it seems that because they felt it, the people that read it seem to feel it as well. So
Awesome.
it's kind of
That is
funny
an
how it all.
awesome, awesome feeling. But we are almost out of time. So where can our
No problem.
listeners and our viewers find you?
Well, I'm all over Amazon. Robert Lee Johnston, of course, is my name, and Lucifer on Leave and Tribute are both there. Uh, Lucifer on Leave is also an audiobook. I got a bloke, we call them a man,
Mhm.
from the area that the book is set. So it's got the authentic accent and all the words said as they should be. And that just took me to international bestseller recently. So it seems to be
Awesome.
Again, I think the authenticity is
Mhm.
carrying
Key.
through. And tribute is in the hands of Scott Rudin at the moment. He's a producer who made No Country for Old Man and Zoolander.
I'm
He's
familiar
in
with his work.
he's in a little bit of trouble at the moment. He's kind of person non grata, but he is keen to make tribute into a movie. So we the screenplay's all been read. I wrote the screenplay for him, and we're sort of going full steam ahead with that. And we just seem to be getting out there step by step every year a little bit more and a little bit deeper. So all the usual sort of channels to get a book is where I'm at.
Awesome. Well, it was such a wonderful time talking to you, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Melissa. That was awesome fun, and I had a great time.
And for our listeners and our viewers, happy reading.